Hello there beautiful, welcome to my channel. My name is Joesephyr and today's Should You Pull video for Dissidia Opera Omnia. We have a pretty hyped character to talk about, along with a bunch of other stuff as well. There's actually quite a lot of stuff happening this Wednesday along with the next 6-man warrior event. So if you want to find out more about Kamlanaut, why people are looking forward to him as much as they are, Paladin Cecil, Palom and Kimahri, and of course the event as well, then stay tuned and keep on watching. Now, of course, before we get started, don't forget to check all of my social links in the description box below, including Twitch, where you can find me streaming all of the Dissidia events as they come live. FF14, we're doing FF5, we're nearly finished platinuming Final Fantasy VIII, so we'll be moving on to Final Fantasy IX soon. Lots to enjoy over on there. Although, bear in mind, I won't be streaming too much this coming week because I'm actually going to be in Amsterdam for TwitchCon this week. So if you happen to be there, then by all means, drop me a line on Twitter or Discord and let me know, and let's hang out. It'd be nice to meet some of you guys. And of course, don't forget over on Patreon, I do shout out one of my patrons every time I release a brand new video, which is my members only website where people can get all sorts of benefits, including title cards made just for you that I put at the end of all of my videos, and shout outs including those title cards, today's of which is going to go to Red Cloud, who funnily enough has Kamlanaut as their title card. A massive thank you goes out to you. You've been a supporter of mine for a long time now, so a massive thank you, and to all of my patrons. If you're interested in learning more, all in the link in the description box below. And of course, don't forget to check out all of the other content creators and resources out there for Dissidia Opera Omnia as well, because there's tons out there for you to be looking at. So first things first, let's get stuck in and take a look at this banner. So there's actually 2 banners up here, but for some reason Ultima only has one of them listed. Sometimes they miss one on occasion. So the banner that you can see down here has Paladin Cecil's returning BT, Kamlanaut's FR and only his FR on it, Palom's LD and Rose's LD, and then the other banner will feature all of Kamlanaut's new gear, including his BT, which is brand new, his FR, and all of his existing kit, and is also going to have Keita and Kimahri come along for the ride as well. Now, there are actually 4 characters that are going to be getting reworks here, so Palom, Kimahri, Paladin Cecil, and obviously Kamlanaut as well, but then Rosa and Keita also get access to their force enhancements. I'm quite interested in getting hold of Keita because I never got hold of her the first time round, but as you find time progresses, there'll be more and more characters that get these force enhancements and you won't need to worry about obtaining them so much. It's going to be a case of just choosing the ones you feel you're going to use most. So let's take a look at Palom first. So Palom is basically just an ice damage dealer. That's all he's ever really done, and his kit was always a little bit disjointed. When he got his LD, he got an ability to when he broke an enemy, he'd get a free turn like lightning and certain other characters like them, but he'd also get 50% HP damage bonus on that extra turn. So what he's gotten here is actually very helpful to him because he's now able to unbreak the enemy using both of his skill 1 and skill 2. He takes a little bit of gearing up to go because he only does 2 HP dumps on his OG and regular plus version of Dissidia Ice Crystal, because each time you use those skills they get stronger and stronger, and realistically you're going to have to spend a couple of turns gearing him up beforehand. Luckily Bluff always does 4 HP dumps, and then the LD also just gets some slightly nicer just buffs to it, but the dual cast plus HP attack you get off of it is now a triple HP dump. That increases his EX gauge, and then his C90 gives him just more HP dumps across the board. And his AA, which is actually slightly more useful now, because obviously, as you well know, if you take a turn that's a free turn on an unbroken turn, you can't then do it again, but you can reset that by using an instant turn ability like an AA, so you might find use for that. So you get 4 HP dumps. There's nothing super special about Palom, if I'm honest. There are much better characters out there. If you like King, he actually functions very similarly to King in that he just throws attacks out in 2 turns, but in Shinryu and Force era, that's not always the best thing to be doing, because if you're taking multiple turns to do the same amount of damage as someone can do in 1, you'd much rather do the latter, because that's going to make your force time feel a bit better. So then we get Kimahri, who, if you've used Kimahri before, his main shtick is his EX, basically. His EX Nova inflicts total blindness on enemies, which is a blind, they cannot hit you, 100% hit rate down, but it only lasts for the 1 turn, but it does bypass a lot of blind immune things, and unless the enemies have guaranteed hits on their attacks, you find that you can get around these things quite well with Kimahri, but other than that, he was always quite lacking, where he gets quite some some nice changes from what he gets with his rework here. So Mighty Guard is a double HP dump, but it does set you up with some nice HP regens, things, you know, basically just all sorts of HP damage resistance and things like that. So you can get usage out of this. And then a Lancet and Thrust Kick, which is typically the only version you're ever going to actually use while you have his basic buff active, is a 4 HP dumping attack with some damage attached to that. His White Wind passive is now a 3 HP dumping attack that gives you access to Jump++, which is always done, which then fills your EX gauge for you to then use Nova again. But Jump++ itself now has 4 HP dumps on it, and obviously you get all of your nice buffs out of that as well. So then you get Nova Extend as well, which is just a triple HP dump. However, the nice thing that comes out of this is you get an extension on Total Blindness. It now lasts for 2 turns instead of 1. And this is actually pretty huge for Kimahri, because it means that he's going to have more time to gear up for the next Nova. And is he going to break the bank? No, almost certainly not. But I think that he might be a little bit of a dark horse. There's actually quite a lot of force gauge attacks, so attacks when the enemy fills their force gauge up, that can be dodged. So if you've got access to Kimahri, you might find you like him more than you thought you did. So Paladin Cecil is also getting a rework here, and in terms of the rework itself, the only thing you really need to know about it is that he's getting additional HP dumps across the board. So Saint's Fall is a triple HP dump, Holy Flame is a quadruple one, his LD is now 5, but he does start with the buff. Like, you'll see this is a trend going forward, that characters will start with their LD buff so they don't have to use it turn 1, and then his EX gives you 5 HP dumps on that. So Cecil's just been there as an Aurabot healer. His days in the sun, because he once had damage percentage increases on HP and bravery damage. Everyone has that now. It's not a big deal in this day and age, but it is nice to have sort of extra party defenses, like healing on a character that can deal half decent damage, things like that. And Holy, obviously, resist down. It's useful. It's not amazing. Holy is quite often resisted, but he can enchant the party for Holy still with his AA. His BT Plus is okay. It increases sort of your brave damage, your HP damage, all that stuff like it used to. HP regen, also nice. And as long as you have 100% or more, because the Paladin Cecil is also capable of overhealing with his LD, etc., you get brave damage cap and held brave and HP damage cap, which is nice. However, he's not doing anything that the likes of Garnet, Ramza, Kieran, Yuna, like a support-based BT plus character is doing. If you had no other options for support BT plus characters, you could go for Cecil. But if you've got other characters available, I think you're probably fine to stick with them unless you're a huge Cecil fan. I love Cecil, I do, but I kind of expended my I'm giving this the Ultima resources to a favourite when I did Warrior of Light, so I don't know if I'm going to do Paladin Cecil as well, even though he's one of the characters I really love. Because there's just not enough to hugely set him apart from his peers. It's kind of sad, really, considering how big a deal he was when he came out the first time. It's definitely not bad, just compared to the other BT character in the party, or in this banner, it don't look great for him. So now, of course, we come to the star of the show. And, of course, before I forget, big shout-outs to Mediu for their Reddit translations. Massive thank you goes out to you for that. So, Kamlanaut obviously gets a rework, gets an EXC90, gets like his FR, gets his BT, and he gets quite the glow-up. Now, I don't want to be that guy, but I've liked Kamlanaut for a while. I already own his costume. I enjoyed him quite a lot when his LD came out. But even I can turn around and say that until now, he's not been the greatest character that Dissidia has ever seen. Things change with this banner. There's maybe they'll change something to weaken him. I doubt it. It wouldn't make sense for them to do that. But let's just go through and we'll see exactly why he's such a big deal. So Kamlanaut's C90 and his Awakening reworks, etc. He basically just makes it so that he gets extra HP dumps on all of the variants of his Frostblade Glassification Plus, which if you don't know already, Glassification is a chance to paralyze enemies, and then Glassification Plus guarantees it. And Glassification Plus is activated by breaking an enemy with his Bravery attack although now you have an alternative option by using Esoteric Region Plus to then give you Glassification Plus so that you guarantee the paralysis another way. And the other nice thing with Glassification Plus is now it paralyzes all enemies as opposed to just the one you're targeting. And Esoteric Region Plus also has 4 HP dumps on it, so does Glassification Plus. You're probably only ever going to use those 2 moves with him because he looks way more complicated than he actually is. The Bravery Plus stuff, you can use it if you really want, but you probably won't find you need to in this point. And then his LD starts with Peerless Hero, exactly the same thing as I'd said previously, and he gets 4 HP dumps on it. He also gets some more party benefits because he got Brave Regen, he got Brave Refund from Peerless Hero for himself, and he now gets a party Brave and HP damage up, and also 40% magic down, or magic attack down from the enemies. Because when Kamlanaut was attacked, his old mechanic, if you will, is that he would inflict Addle on the enemies, which further lowered their attack, max bravery, and magic attack down. So it's nice. Brave Attack plus 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 does at least set the enemy bravery to 0. So if you want to use it, you can guarantee that you'll get Glassification Plus because you will break an enemy using it. So it's useful. Again though, you'll probably find you don't need to use it very often because Esoteric Region Plus and Glassification Plus, you'll just alternate along with the EX and the LD. Speaking of the EX, he now enchants himself for Ice, which is very relevant to his FR and the rest of his gear. He also starts with his EX, which is fabulous, and he gets 4 HP dumps as long as you keep up the Desire of Provenance buff. I should have mentioned that earlier. The chance that you're going to run out of this is very, very low. Most of his stuff extends his buffs or keeps up his Desire of Provenance. His LD keeps it up. You're not going to need to worry about that. When it comes to Great Wheel or like just the regular non-plus versions of his attacks, you're unlikely to use them. In the situation where you do have to, though, regular Great Wheel will give you more stacks of the buff needed to give you Desire of Provenance and get all the plus versions of everything back. All you lose is an HP dump for doing it, which, sad, but it's not the end of the world. And the recast rate of it's gone up as well, so you're going to be using this more frequently. Then he gets his FR. I'm actually going to come back to the FR and talk about the BT first. The BT is actually really fierce. It gives you 50% Brave gains, which is fierce, 20% Brave damage cap up, 20% HP cap up, and after acting while targeting an enemy, I would say it's got a different name, but inflict an alternative paralysis to all enemies for 1 turn. So whenever you attack the enemies, they're all paralyzed. They are not moving for the entire duration of Kamlanaut's BT effect. It's pretty savage. So they're unable to act. 50% damage, brave damage taken up, and when the debuff is removed, the party member with the closest turn gets to act immediately after them. So this obviously splits up enemy turns in the situations where they might be taking too many turns. Basically, the main reason you're using this, though, as much as that all sounds fantastic, is for his FR. It's his FR is colossal, for want of a better word. So he's partnered up with Cypher, which is pretty fierce. You get 20% when doing a bravery command against a target with a debuff that includes unable to act. So paralysis or the debuff that comes off of his BT. When a character does an ice bravery command, is also going to boost you up quite nicely. So I'm going to move over quickly to DissidiaCompendium.com here. So a big thank you goes out to you guys as always. There is little bits and pieces about this that really takes the mick when it comes to how much damage you can actually do with this. So you might want to look at this bit here, like where I've just highlighted, it said includes during knockback. So if you're getting 20% from doing an ice attack, 20% from hitting a character that can't act, and then knocking them back and doing a launch, and then hitting them again with 2 other characters that are hitting a character that can't act, that's 80% on an attack that you're doing damage during a launch with. It's ridiculous. Now, obviously, there are things you need to do to set this up to be where it is. Luckily, they are both involving characters that many people already have, one of which I recommended as the LD of choice for beginner players for a reason. The first thing you're going to need is to actually be able to knock the enemies back, which is going to include Selfie. So a Selfie friend unit, you can actually take a Kamlanaut friend unit instead of your Selfie if you wanted to do it that way, meaning you don't have to pull for Kamlanaut if you don't want to, because realistically, once you've got his BT effect and his FR gauge up, you can take whoever you want at that point, because you're going to be getting 80% on every hit if you set everything up correctly. So, like I said, you get the launches off with Selfie. Now, the only problem with the rest of it is that Kamlanaut doesn't enchant the party for ice. He only enchants himself for it. So, you can get around that with the likes of Kurasame or Snow BT if you don't have Kurasame. Kurasame Call is obviously going to be the ideal situation here, because you can give that to Kamlanaut, give it to him, go BT, go FR, and then the next character, say Tidus or Terra or any character that takes a lot of turns in a row, wants to just go off at that point, you're going to do a lot of damage. So much, in fact, that a lot of players I've spoken to have said that they are actively not pulling for Kamlanaut because he makes the game too easy. But it's colossal how much damage he does. I would imagine that any global exclusive content that we get, like Abyss or any kind of Shinryu fights like that, will lock Ice out to try and stop Kamlanaut from being a part of it. He really does do that much damage that we've had these challenges come back, like for Shinryu, and they've been really, really enjoyable and fun. And Kamlanaut comes along and just kind of goes, no, I'm going to make this easy again. And he really does, if you have the correct setup. If you don't have Selfie and Kurasame, he's still a really good character. He actually is still very enjoyable to play. He has a lot of interactive abilities. He has a lot of fun things he can do, like with his EX and the alternating of his skills. And Paralysis is a very strong mechanic anyway. But this stuff that he can do with his FR really just takes it to another level. Okay, so now let's take a look at the 6 warrior quest area 1 fight that we'll get alongside Kamlanaut. So, as always, big shout outs to DissidiaCompanion.com here for the information they provide here. We actually have 2 enemies that we have to fight with this, and much like the first 6 warrior quest, what you do is, instead of taking friend units or anything, you take 6 characters instead of 3, and you can swap between those characters freely and use them as you would. So we have the Dimensional Raging Man Tortoise and the Keras Leon, or Keras Lion, which they have a lot of HP to start with. They have 75 million HP each. However, this fight can be either really quick if you want it to be, or really long if you want it to be. So in terms of the mechanics of the fight, they have obviously a force gauge which will increase, and they get more attack, and they become immune to delay after they hit the 80% mark, but they only become immune to the delay after 80%, so there are reasons why you can still take delay characters here. And then at 100%, the Lion uses a AoE Brave HP attack that hits you twice, which ignores bravery reductions but doesn't ignore HP damage reductions, which is pretty nice. So it's obviously to encourage you to use characters like Cecil here, so you can reduce HP damage, but you can honestly get around this by using pretty much any generic defensive call, so your Raijins, your Setsas, anything like that is going to nullify that attack, so you really won't have to worry about it. The Lion doesn't actually do all that much in terms of during its own turn. It's just there for the force gauge and the force attack more than anything. But the Tortoise has some pretty interesting mechanics that you may want to bear in mind. So, much like any of the turtle enemies we've fought before, it either hides or it doesn't hide. While it's hiding in its shell, it reduces any non-elemental damage by 999%, so only bravery damage though, so brave gains and everything will still work fine. And then while it's not in its, while it's in its shell, it reduces any non-elemental damage, and you have to deal elemental damage to it. And when it's not out of its shell, then it becomes resistant to elemental damage and needs to take non-elemental damage. So the other thing it does here is it will use a red aura when it goes into its shell, which has to be cancelled by hitting it with ice bravery damage. So obviously, Kamlanaut, Palom, Kurasame, there's lots of ways around that, because if you don't do it when it gets its turn, it's going to mass dispel your entire party and probably wipe you out in one shot. So just make sure that you're catering to that kind of damage, so bring some ice damage along with you unless you have plans to delay it to heck and back, which it does frame its turns while it's in its shell, so you have to bear that in mind. It can't just be delayed by anybody. But there is a certain lady with a whip that will function very well in this particular fight by just pushing the tortoise as far back as you can and then just using elemental damage to do all of the work for you. Now, if you've got Kamlanaut, you're going to find this fight easy. There's no two ways about that. because when the as the enemy force gauge increases, the lion gets more and more powerful. You do still have to keep in mind the attacks that the tortoise is going to do, so that it doesn't dispel you and doesn't do anything nasty during force time, where they have increased HP and bravery damage limits. And if they don't get a turn, and it doesn't really matter, you're supposed to paralyze them a lot. So if you've got Kamlanaut, you're gonna wipe them out in seconds flat. 75 million HP is a lot, unless you have Kamlanaut. But so what you'll typically do in a 6-man warrior fight, and the way that most people will do this, is they'll have 3 characters that they want to end up beating the enemy with, and then 3 characters to set that party up. So extra characters would include the likes of Selfie or Quistis, or characters that are there to use their cool abilities, or maybe to protect you while you're setting up, or just debuff based characters that can do their functions without them actually being there. And then largely you'll want to end up with a party that can just churn out damage. So if you're using Kamlanaut, obviously he's going to be a part of it. You don't have to use him though. You absolutely don't have to use him. There are plenty of clears on YouTube of people who are not using Kamlanaut. Many of them will use the likes of either Kryl or Kane, because Kryl's HP damage can go through the roof pretty quickly, especially considering that it's elemental damage, which plays well into what you're doing with the tortoise. Just make sure you get some ice damage in there so that it doesn't get that nasty attack off. Kane is obviously going to do a lot of damage here. Cisne is actually a brilliant character for you to bring alongside those two, and then a third character for you to then go, I'm going to use a BT phase now that's getting Cisne and Kane go off while I've got my FR gauger, and the silliness just ensues, and you just go off with that. So, like I said, this fight can either be really long or really short, depending on how you want to approach it. So now, of course, we have Would You Pull, the section of the video where you, the viewer, get your chance to let your voice be heard and tell everyone whether you would pull on Kamlanaut or not, and why that might be the case. So, this is not going to come as a shock to anybody, but when it comes to the banner with Kamlanaut in it, I actually didn't put a Would You Pull poll up for Cecil's banner, and I probably should have. TwitchCon stuff preparing made me forget, so I apologise for that. But with Kamlanaut's banner, 75% of people said they were pulling on gems with this banner, 14% said they were using more than 100 tickets, 0 people said they were using less than 100 tickets, and 11% of people said that they weren't going to be pulling on this banner at all. I'm gemming this banner. I'm not even sorry about it. It just makes sense. It's the sensible thing to do. Even in the very unlikely situation that Kamlanaut gets nerfed for whatever reason, like maybe his stuff doesn't work during launches or anything, I'd still pity him. I still think he's fantastic. He's probably too good in his current state, but then, you know, if you want an easy ride for Shinryu difficulty, then he's gonna be somebody that you want. As a matter of fact, like I said earlier, many of the people that I spoke to said that they were actively avoiding pulling Kamlanaut because they just didn't want to use a character that made early Shinryu that easy. So let's go ahead and look in some comments. Hest Flarestar says, "This is it, the banner I've been waiting for, and I'm not exaggerating when I say I've exercised more foresight and restraint in anticipation of a Kamlanaut's kit than I ever have. His kit and the team building around it absolutely represent the first step of power creep for FR, and I'm beyond excited to put all the resources I've saved for him. I've even green and blued Snow just for him. I'm not a fan of Snow in the character as a character in the least bit. Needless to say, Kamlanaut will get gems all the way to pity if need be." I think many people are going to be in this boat. Like, it's just, realistically, the people that will say don't pull for Kamlanaut because X, Y, and Z are people who will not want to use him for their own reasons. There's no two ways about it. He's an exceptional character, and you just, if you're pulling without bias of any kind, you're going to want him, and even if you lack the pieces to build up the puzzle for the true bit, those characters come back. So having him in your back pocket is never a bad idea unless you actively don't want him. Silence says, "With Kamlanaut, I'll be going all gems all the way. With the longevity of how his FR will go and how we really need to plan ahead with our resources, it's a no-brainer. His rework overhauls him completely, including his long-needed EX attack rework, with what his BT brings to the table, incorporating a small bit of his brother's mechanics, while providing the bravery and HP damage cap increase in brave gains. He can easily keep the party going while saving for Tidus and Luna Freya when she rocks up." There are other characters that are going to be really powerful, and there are going to be events that Kamlanaut doesn't work in very well. They are the minority. Like, there are very few characters that can do what Kamlanaut can do. Like, certainly with the speed at which he increases the force gauge whilst attacking With other characters, it doesn't even need to be him doing the attacking as long as someone is hitting somebody that's been hit by his BT effect. It's crazy how much he can do. And when it comes to characters like Tidus and Lunafreya, you can put them together and it works really well. So there's no... In terms of just gameplay alone, there's very little reason not to go in for Kamlanaut. Kain and Kamlanaut are two of the characters that I spoke about in my Future Pulls video. They're characters that rock up even to this day, like in some events. They're just ridiculous. And then finally Gale says, call me crazy, but I think I'd actually like to skip Kamlanaut. I'm all for units that are powerful and make life easier, but Kamlanaut might be too strong for how fresh into the era we are. I might get his kit with tickets and then build him if I'm ever cornered and absolutely have to, but otherwise I'd rather have more fun with other more balanced characters while the era is still fresh before I cash in on the OP stuff. You're not the only person that I've spoken to that said something like this. He is really powerful. But if you're in a position where you can't pull for him, then you don't have to have him. There is no one character in this game, not even FR built Kamlanaut, that is required for anything. You could always find ways around it. There are clears of all content that don't use Kamlanaut. I just think that if you are looking from a path of least resistance viewpoint, it's a no-brainer. It has to. It just makes sense. And if you're unable to pull for him, then, you know, perhaps consider going in for just his LD or his FR, and then perhaps pick up his BT later with tokens if you wanted to. You don't have to go for him, but the power is there, and it's very evident. So let's take a look at whether we should be pulling for Kamlanaut. I think the answer is yes, honestly. Like, I think I've gushed about this character's kit enough, as well as other people that have, like, the only negatives about this character is that he's too good. Like, that is the thing. And if that bothers you, then no, you probably shouldn't pull for Kamlanaut. But outside of that, he's pretty bonkers. Quite frankly, in his current state, he is the biggest definition of a broken character in Dissidia history, arguably. Just because... Well, except maybe Garnet. But he just does too much with what he does. He doesn't... Like, he accelerates the speed at which you can kill enemies tenfold just because his FR works in such a roundabout way. People argued that it was a bug when it came out in JP, and then Square turned around and said, no, it's not, it's intended. And then people just rolled with it and went off with it. Increasing the force gauge by 80% a turn renders most fights that don't resist ice, paralysis, or launching completely moot, to be honest. And even if you're lacking, like, the ice enchant part of it, you're still going to be hitting for 60% on the HP bonus. And that's pretty crazy. So people say you have to have ice enchant and selfie. Selfie on her own can still do a lot. So that's something to bear in mind. It's actually almost unfortunate. In my eyes, it's almost a shame that his FRBT combo is so good, because the rest of his kit's actually really cool. I didn't mention it earlier, but his EX delays by a turn, which doesn't sound like a huge amount. But when you consider that his BT effect, like, interrupts enemy turns and makes your, like can make Kamlanaut go in between them, you kind of get this really cool situation where an enemy all the way paralyzed can't hit you. Then it runs out, and then Kamlanaut jumps in, uses EX, paralyzes them again, and then nudges them away so that someone else can get a turn in. It's ridiculous. It's so powerful. And he hits the HP caps, the bravery caps, the brave gains as well. It's like, he just hits every mark, apart from healing. It's just so good. He does have party-wide buffs. He has defensive auras. Like, Adel's not a big part of his kit anymore, but it's still there. And he just overshadows everybody else, like, at this point in time. Cecil's not a terrible character. Not by any means. He has access to his overhealing. He's got solid party auras, party enchant for holy if he needs it. And the BT's fine, but I wouldn't pull for it if you've got, like, Garnet, Kieran, Ramza, Yuna, all sorts of other support-based characters, because he doesn't do anything that they couldn't do, really. Like, he's nice. I love Cecil, I really do. I don't have his BT because I unfortunately failed to get it the first time round. I ain't going to go pulling for it now, and that's because I have other characters that can fill his shoes, which is not what the case is with Kamlanaut. The only negatives I have to say here are that Kamlanaut does require a lot to use to his maximum potential, because you are absolutely going to need his BT, as well as his FR maxed out, his force enhancements maxed out, and if you don't have Selfie and Kurasame, Call or Snow BT, you're not going to get as much out of him as you could. And if you do, you might not want to use him because he's just that silly and he's that much of a monstrosity that people may actively decide not to use him. And I do think that it's like something I want to bring up actually is that I think it's not very fair when people call out people for using powerful characters. It's not a person's fault if they want to use that character. Like, for example, I enjoy Kamlanaut a lot. I like his kit, I have done, and there's evidence to suggest it. Because if you go back and look at my streams, I used Kamlanaut quite a lot when his LD first came out. And I like him. And the same was true with Garnet. So it's always kind of like a sad moment when you see a character you like get this absolutely busted treatment because you're scared that someone's going to read you for using it. Honestly, don't listen to those people. Use whoever the bloody hell you like. If they're super powered and you enjoy using someone for being powerful, go off, sis. I'm here with you and I love it. So sometimes it's nice to make a challenge for yourself. Sometimes it's nice to just crack out a character that you know is going to absolutely blitz whatever it is you're doing. The other characters on the banner are fairly superfluous. I'm actually quite happy that Kimahri and Kater are on Kamlanaut's banner because I'd like to get hold of those characters. Kater is still kind of cool, and with force enhancements and, you know, off-turn damage, she may come in useful. And then Kimahri having an extension on his EX debuff is really nice for him. So I've never really gotten to play Kimahri before, so I'd quite like to try him. Palom I can live without. Rosa, I like Rosa. I'm probably not going to use her over other sort of charger characters. Like, I've got Cryo for that, and people who have Braska for that. So I'm probably not going to invest too heavily in Rosa. But at the end of the day, they're all, like, you know, sauce on the side to Kamlanaut. Let's be honest here. So that's going to be all for today's video. Thank you ever so much for watching today. And let me know in the comments below who you're most excited about for this banner and why is it Kamlanaut? Why isn't it Kamlanaut more specifically? Do you find that he's, in his current state, too powerful to be used right now and you would actively avoid him for that reason? Or do you kind of feel like it's nice to crack out somebody that's ridiculous, like, and makes the game a bit easier for you? Like, I personally like a challenge, so in a way, I do get where people are coming from, and it does make me sad to see that, like, Kamlanaut does kind of render quite so much of the era moot. So as much as I should practice what I preach a little bit, I do feel like I probably won't use him as much as I could do just because I like variety more than anything, and to use the same character for everything would be a bit sad. But I just think that it's nice to state that people shouldn't feel shamed for the characters they enjoy using. That's all I meant by that. So sound off in the comments below and let me know what you think of that. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notification of future videos I might be making. And I will have Desh and Makina's video coming up pretty shortly, but I'm going to be in Amsterdam while it happens, so I'm going to go to TwitchCon, and hopefully I'll have a really good time there and meet some lovely people. Again, if you happen to be there, let me know, and then hopefully we can chat and meet up. And that's going to be it from me, so have a great day, beautiful, and I'll see you next time. Bye!